Namaskar, this is Dr. Puneet Mahendru, and I'm going to talk to you about sleep. I have I'm trying to record this so that we can move along smoothly. And tomorrow, when we meet um, at Cupertino Center, we'll be able to have ample time for questions and answers. So I'm going to start right away, jump into my slides. Uh, let's see. Trying to do this again. So here it is. Hopefully, you can all see it. We are going to talk about sleeping today. And as you can see, that I've talked about sleeping better, not necessarily removing all the issues that you've ever had experienced regarding sleep, but perhaps improving the quality as well as the time that you are able to stay asleep. So we'll move along and talk about this. Now, uh, sleep, as you know, is very, very important. Uh, it's not just about resting, it is actually necessary to repair and revitalize all our bodily functions, whether it be our cardiovascular function, or whether it be a lymphatic system, or whether it be a nervous system. Just about every system in the body requires the repair and refreshing that sleep brings about. So it then therefore it natural to kind of imply that when sleep isn't quite good, that it can create other issues related to our, you know, uh, to our waking time, to our health. Uh, Looking now at what happens when we don't sleep well. You may have, of course, noticed that you have a foggy head, you feel tired, irritable. The other issue that comes about is that which can be tricky, especially as we getting on in years, is that our gait can get a little bit unsteady, and the risk of fall increases when we have not slept the night before, and we happen to be of an older age. Uh, Memory issues sometimes can be confounded, blood pressure changes, some mental health concerns, and also our immune system gets compromised. Let me talk to you a little bit about this, just giving you examples. So, a very close family member of mine, you know, her blood pressure shot up to 200. This was in India, and she was hospitalized, and they were really concerned. And she kept saying, "Just give me something, help me sleep." And nobody, and they did all kind of tests, but nobody thought of, maybe just helping her rest and sleep at night, because she had barely been sleeping 3 to 4 hours for several weeks now, and that had caused such serious changes in her body that she had to be hospitalized. But really, as soon as she was able to take care of her sleep, the other issues also started resolving gradually. The other, and when we are not sleeping well, if we're tired or if we're traveling, we are more likely to catch viruses and illnesses, or even when we have jet lag, we are sort of more compromised in a way. So, kind of keep really being very protective of that sleep, remembering that it is very important for us to not catch on to viruses or any kind of illnesses that might be in the air. Uh, and one of the best protective factor is that we are getting adequate rest at night, of course, in addition to our diet and other hygiene issues. So sometimes not sleeping for a while can cause memory issues, and people might think that, gee, am I beginning to develop dementia? And that can be a concern. So keeping that in mind, that the first thing to take care of is indeed your sleep. Looking now at sleep itself, what kind of sleep issues come up? So sleep, if we don't get adequate sleep and that goes on for a while, that is called insomnia. So insomnia can be categorized as initial, middle, late, or just unrefreshed sleep. So as you understand, initial is when you have difficulty falling asleep, you're lying in bed for a long time. Middle is that, you fall asleep just fine, but you wake up several times at night. And late is when you tend to kind of wake up early in the morning. And unrefreshed sleep is that you're sleeping okay, but you don't have the sense that you're kind of feeling well. And all these can create an issue because even with initial insomnia, if you're thinking up, uh, generally people when they lie down in bed, that's the time they start making lists of what is to be done, or they recap about different things that haven't been going well, or this is the time to attend to their worry list. And that's really not helpful at all. It's much better to kind of make that to-do list much earlier in the day, and keep that initial bedtime for activities that are more relaxing. Then when it comes to middle insomnia, as we get on in age, we there is a tendency to get up several times, and I'll explain that in a bit, just as to why that happens. But the anticipation, the expectation that that's not going to happen, because like when you were 21, you could probably just lie down on the floor in someone's home or on the couch or even in a chair and fall asleep. To expect to have the same quality of sleep and same quickness of getting to bed and then just getting up 8 hours later, as we get on in our age, is unrealistic. So part of our insomnia issues become having unrealistic expectations. Then late can be an issue because if you get up earlier than the rest of the household, then people might, you might hear someone getting upset because making noises in the kitchen, trying to get this going or that going, or opening doors. Then also sometimes getting enough sleep but complaining about not feeling refreshed, that doesn't sit well with our family members also. Then but itni der se to soye the, and and so on. So these are the kind of different sleep issues that can come up. Now, you see, sleep cycle is about 7 to 9 hours. And what happens in these 7 to 9 hours is there are different phases, and the different stages and phases. And you may have read about them. There is the N1, or the stage N1 phase, and it's the lightest non-REM sleep. And it's actually just a few minutes, just 5% of your entire sleep cycle time. Then you have N2, which is a little bit more than the N1, and then the N3, which is the deep sleep, and then the last one is your rapid eye movement, or the time when you kind of dream. So the N1 sleep, it's not very useful for feeling refreshed. Yes, once in a while, you get into a few minutes of a, doze off here and there, but it isn't exactly very refreshing. Then the next stage, the N2, well, that is a little bit more refreshing. But the most refreshing sleep indeed is deep sleep. This is where you feel most rested, refreshed, repaired. And also the REM sleep, where REM is not very refreshing necessarily in that moment, but it's this dream stage is also really important in sort of regulating some of our other systems. Now, each phase, each of these four stages together form one cycle. And there are 3 to 4 cycles during the period of the night. Each cycle lasts from 70 minutes to 120 minutes. And when you start sleeping at night, they're shorter, like closer to 70 minutes. But early in the morning, before waking up, they're much longer, closer to 120 minutes. So the important thing to notice is that from one cycle to the next, there is invariably, uh, a small period of awakening. And everyone experiences that. It's just that when we are younger and uh, we don't notice it, it's very smooth. And we just go from one cycle to the next quite easily. But as we get a little older, uh, that transition from one cycle to the next is not so smooth. There are small periods when we awaken. And if we happen to not go back to the next cycle, we start looking at the clock or wondering, or we might get up to go to the bathroom. And that delays our moving to the next stage and gives us the sensation that our sleep is broken up and not as comfortable. Now, the important thing here is to, think about sleep in a different way. We have, for a very long time during our youth, just taken sleep for granted. We feel that all the good work that we do is during the day, and sleep is just something that has to happen in order for us to go right back to doing our wonderful activities during the day. And we have to shift that focus and recognize that indeed sleep is very valuable and is so essential for us to be productive, and is so essential for us to be healthy physically as well as emotionally, and so become a little bit more protective about our sleep, and think in terms not of just fixing the sleep issue once and for all, but more like as an attempt to manage it. Um, it's going to be something that you want to take care of on a daily basis, and not try to go back to that, continuous 7 8 hour of sleep, or even continuous 6 hour of sleep that you might have had when you were younger, but accept imperfections and not let those really cause you excessive worry. Some imperfections in your sleep, so long as they allow you to function well the next day, are okay, right? And of course, accepting some of the changes that come up are okay too. For instance, uh, your sleep schedule might change. You may not be able to stay up as late, or you might wake up earlier in the morning, which is what we call a phase advance. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Then, even the naps, kind of looking at those, uh, how much do we nap? When do we nap? Sometimes people say, oh, it's okay to nap. Sometimes people say it's not okay to nap. So let's talk about that a little bit. A nap can be a good thing, provided it is, about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And if it is between 1 and 3 p.m., because anytime after that, it's going to start interfering with our nighttime sleep. Um, you know, uh, Someone very close to me, um, he would nap from, say, 1:30 to or 2:30 to 5:30, and then was constantly complaining ki neend nahi aati, can't sleep at night. But now, if you get up so late, then it's really going to be hard to fall back to sleep again. So, being aware of that, keeping your nap time to 30 to 45 minutes and between the hours of 1 and 3. And likewise, managing those midnight awakenings. We'll talk about that in just a bit too, as we talk about sleep hygiene. Now, thinking about what are the different reasons why we might not be sleeping well. Of course, the most common thing that comes to our mind is stress. Stress can be some difficulty going on in our life. Stress can be, doing too much during the day. Stress can be a happy stress, needing to prepare for a child or somebody else's wedding, or stress can be just guests visiting us, or um, both positive and negative things that become a lot for us to deal with, either physically or emotionally, is going to be stress. Then there can be some sleep hygiene concerns. We might not be following the right time of going to bed, or other activities that we need to take care of. So our sleep hygiene will need adjusting, which is habits that facilitate good sleep. Then, of course, food, having rich food late at night. And here, the interesting thing is people have been saying that eat earlier in the day. And, my experience was that if I ate very early in the day, then I couldn't sleep when I was hungry. So I didn't quite know how to work with that. Then I realized that perhaps a way to kind of manage it would be to eat at a early hour. But if one got very hungry, then to allow oneself to have a late night snack, just maybe like an apple, a fruit, or just cheese and crackers, or a cup of warm milk. So, which that might be better rather than eating late at night. If someone has, an issue just like I do, that I can't sleep on a empty stomach. And of course, so that as we get older, we do start taking some medications, either for blood pressure or diabetes or something different. And some of these medications can also interfere with our sleep. There can be medical concerns that interfere with sleep. Once again, blood pressure issues can be there. There can be acid reflux, which we might not even be aware that we are experiencing some acid reflux, and that might cause some difficulty with sleep as well. Then there may be some issue lurking with our emotional health. There may be an anxiety issue, or we get into a pattern of chronic worrying, or we may experience some kind of a depression. Sometimes the only symptom of depression that we uh, are aware of is actually insomnia. We might not be so much in touch with our emotions, our feelings. They may be at a very, sort of subdued level, or suppressed. And the only thing we can be aware is that, we're not sleeping okay. Um, in addition to that, the neurotransmitters that get lowered when we are depressed, such as serotonin, those low serotonin levels also cause insomnia. So that's something to make note of, that we have to take care of that if we want to sleep better. Someone has, any kind of post-traumatic stress, or there's been trauma, early childhood trauma, that can also come back and haunt us late in later years and interfere with our sleep, or either cause nightmares, or sometimes when there is a history of trauma, people report that they don't dream as much, their REM sleep gets disturbed. So then that causes problems with repairing of our physiological systems as well. Sleep apnea keeps the people up because, those machines, I'm sure many of you have been prescribed and have tried to use them and did not like them, and they're just sitting somewhere in the corner of your room. So sleep apnea, not only does it cause difficulty with sleep, it's actually connected with a lot of physiological and emotional upsets. So see if you can take care of it. And it's not just people who are overweight who have sleep apnea. Sometimes People who don't have a weight issue can have sleep apnea as well. So try and see if you can find some way to work with it. There are now newer masks that help you. There might be, uh, you know, some gadgets which just have two prongs that can be sort of connected to the nostrils, and they're not so they don't feel as claustrophobic. And then, our genetics also plays a role in sleep. Some people have a greater tendency to be upset with it. And there are some people who are just blessed, with great sleep. I mean, I have a friend, and she, on her own account, says that her mind is constantly worrying and thinking, and the chatter is constant in her mind. But she says she has no difficulty falling asleep. I mean, she can just whenever she's tired or anxious, she just goes to bed, because that's a great way of escaping her worries. So how blessed is that? So that can happen as well. Now, of course, as I mentioned that as we get older, there are changes that come about in our body and in our sleep. So one of the changes is that of phase advance. What phase advance is that we start feeling sleepy earlier in the day, and we, wake up early in the day. So now, uh, when we get up early in the day next morning, if we have younger people in the household, they might, kind of find that upsetting. So, so kind of see how you can work with that, because that's a natural phenomena. Then frequent awakenings, as I said, we uh, no longer get this continuous solid stretch, but end up waking up several times because there's a gap from one cycle to the other. There may be more awakenings because we need to go to the bathroom. Then our mouth may become dry. I mean, this is a frequent experience, especially in with some people who are taking certain medications, or who might have some, like people with rheumatoid arthritis or with diabetes. Their mouth gets dry, so they drink a little water. They drink a little water, so they have to run to the bathroom an hour later, and then the mouth is dry, so they drink again, and this cycle kind of just continues all night long. So that's something to keep in mind. And one of the things that I might suggest in that case is that when your mouth is dry at night, that you manage that. Keep a glass of water right next to you, so you don't have to get up to drink water. And the other is that you can try taking certain things that might help with the dryness. Maybe elaichi, or long, or clove. Or you can keep some kind of hard candy, which is something like Ricola. I try and keep the Ricola at bedtime, because just sucking it, a hard candy, can actually increase the saliva, the activity of the salivary glands, so the mouth is not as dry. Of course, frequent urination is a concern. Sometimes certain medical conditions bring that about. Some diuretics and steroids also bring about changes in sleep at night. So, knowing that all these things that are happening are natural and normal as age advances, and being sort of aligned with them, working with them, trying to change what you can, but not letting yourself get too distressed that something horrible is going on, because you can't sleep quite the way as you used to when you were in your 20s or 30s. One of the biggest buzzwords these days related to sleep and sleep management is circadian rhythm. So, what circadian rhythm is really? It's it's our body's sleep and wakefulness cycle. There are times when our body feels more awake and the times when the body feels more drowsy and sleepy. And this is generally aligned to the sun's cycle, the sunrise and sunset cycle. So it so happens that, and it is regulated in our body by a substance called melatonin. You might have all heard about it. So in the morning when we are up, then we go outside in the sun, and our melatonin creating factory is sort of set in motion at that time. The melatonin is cleared up, and then a new melatonin creating cycle begins. And gradually, as the day goes on and the night sets, the melatonin level in the body, in our brain, increases, and that signals us to fall asleep. Now, if we try to change that, stay up too late at night or sleep in too late in the morning, then we get misaligned from our sleep wakefulness cycle and from the sun's sunrise and sunset cycle. And that creates a problem with sleep. So, trying to keep in mind and going with the flow of nature, going to bed when our melatonin level is the highest in the body, which is, late in the evening, 8:39. So trying to sleep by 9:30 or 10 p.m. is considered an optimum time for going to sleep, plus or minus half an hour. And then in the morning, getting up around, any time from 6:30 to 7:30 is a good time to be waking up. Course. So another thing that helps us, suppose this is not happening for us, or suppose we want to optimize the level of melatonin and optimize being fully awake during the day, what helps is early morning sun exposure. And this is, our parents and our ancestors used to tell us this all the time, to go out in the sun in the mornings, or to give ark to sun, as we did in India. But now we have Stanford professors, Dr. Huberman, in his research podcast, has mentioned that exposure to sunshine in the mornings, 10 to 15 minutes, is really valuable in resetting a circadian rhythm and allowing us to sleep at a proper time at night and feel more awake during the day. So if you can get out, and they say not just sitting close to the window, but actually going outside the house is helpful. If you can't really go out for a walk, then just sitting in your balcony for 10 to 15 minutes. And if even that is not possible, then maybe sitting by the window, but sitting there for a longer period of time, so that you can get that sunshine in your eyes. And looking at the sun, not directly, but just a little bit off. They say that those early mornings are especially valuable because at that time the sun's rays are not so direct. So, you are able to look at the sun and or close to it and get the benefit in a shorter amount of time. Now, the other thing that they have found that is valuable, in addition to the exposure to sunlight in the morning, which we've talked about and known about for quite some time now with regard to circadian rhythm, but what they're saying now that equally important is the fact that we get 6 to 8 hours of darkness, 6 to 8 hours when we don't have any light in the room. So this can be a little bit challenging, because if we are indeed going to wake up to go to the bathroom at night, or for any other reason, then how do we manage that? How do we manage to keep the room absolutely dark? So here, maybe I would like to suggest that, you consider an eye mask. So when you need to get up, you can just remove it quickly, but at least rest of the time you're getting a period of complete darkness. Of course, a night light, so long as it's not in your vision, that might be okay if it's just emitting a very small amount of light. But eye mask might uh, be better. And you can always keep a little, a torch light with you by your bedside, so you can use that when you wake up. So, kind of doing those things rather than having light, dim light in the entire room might be better to align yourself with circadian rhythm and fall asleep. The and then exercise is really helpful, provided again it's not very close to your bedtime and it's done more in the morning. And you can try this for yourself. If you do manage to exercise for about half an hour or 40 minutes in the daytime, anytime from 7 to 10, you'll find that that night the sleep is going to be a little bit more refreshing, right? What's very important also is to have a very consistent kind of a bedtime routine, to go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. Whether you have guests in the house or whether it's a weekend, still trying to maintain that same pattern. Maybe sometimes a little bit of a variation once in a while, you go to bed an hour later, but being mindful that this is your bedtime. We do that with children. We quite unabashedly say, yeah, my children go to bed at 8 p.m. or this is their nap time. But we don't do that with ourselves. We kind of are more flexible about it. And as I said, we need to be more protective about our sleep. So keeping that in mind, um, is important. And let's go on to our next slide, and which it's just sort of segues, in fact, the circadian rhythm and sleeping in a consistent time schedule just moves us all very easily along to the other issues that we have of sleep hygiene. When we start looking at how to help our sleep online, we'll find that um, there's a big topic of what they call sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene is basically activities and habits that we form that can help our sleep at night. So one of them is a consistent sleep awake cycle, like our timing, as I mentioned. Then, of course, the early morning sun, as we talked about just now. Um, and we talked about not having light at night, but also reducing the exposure to total light, in the evenings. As um, in the house, you might have a lot of lights on, but 2 hours before bedtime, you just start reducing the amount of light. Maybe if there's a dimmer, dim the lights. Maybe not watch, you know, evening news or television, especially evening news. That's just got to go, because that just revs up your mind. You see all kind of things happening all over the world, and the mind needs to start toning down, winding down, and not get revved up. It's really unrealistic to expect that we'll be all stirred up with world news, and our children will be running around, or grandchildren will be running around everywhere, and all those overhead recessed lights in the family room and kitchen will be full blown, and then we'll be eating a good rich meal, and then go to bed and fall down and expect to fall asleep. So that just doesn't happen anymore, right? So we've got to start putting the lights down, have less lights, and 2 hours before bedtime, start reducing our exposure to screen time, especially the last 1 hour. And then not, and then also the other important part about a good sleep hygiene is to um, avoid caffeine after 2 p.m., right? So, a lot of times when I've gone to someone's house, they've said, oh, it's only 4 p.m. or it's only 5 p.m. and you're not sleeping until 10, so you can have tea now. And we are accustomed to tea around that time in India. But if sleep is a challenge, then we have to start thinking about cutting out our caffeine after 2. And the other piece is not just cutting out caffeine after 2, but also making note of how much caffeine we're drinking in the morning. Because say we have 2 lattes or 2 or 3 cups of strong coffee or chai tea in the morning, uh, even then there's going to be a lot of caffeine in our system at night time, because caffeine has a really long half life, which means that it takes a long time for it to sort of get out of our body system. So if we start with a lot in the morning, a lot will still remain in the body in the evening. So reducing the overall amount of caffeine is important as well. And we already talked about limiting nap time and uh, eating a lighter meal rather than a heavier meal, and exercising um, earlier in the day rather than later. Okay. Another thing that you might not know, I mean, in India, we tend to take a bath in the mornings. But one important thing for good sleep, or one thing that you can try, is to take a warm bath. Now, a warm bath about half an hour before, not right away, but a half an hour before you go to bed. And the reason for that is when you take a warm bath, your body temperature increases. But half an hour later, it kind of plummets, it goes down. And that drop in your body temperature actually induces sleep, it helps sleep. Because in order to sleep, and as we get older, we feel more cold. You can see I'm kind of bundled up right here. And I usually feel cold during the day. But during the night time, you get better sleep if your ambient room temperature is lower, which means it's around from 65 to 70 degrees. By all means, if you're cold, take an extra blanket, wear your socks, or if your feet are cold. But the ambient room temperature needs to be between 65 and 70 for the best sleep. So that might be something to keep in mind if you have gotten the room really revved up with the heating system to thermostat setting being at 75 or so in the day, but in the evening, you might need to see how you can bring it down. Also, this is the time, evening time, when we start calling India, talk to our family members, our sisters, and Mossy, and we get all the news that's happening. Sometimes it's sad news, sometimes it's juicy news, and that's the thing that's going to be keeping us up at night. So keeping that in mind, you might have to make some changes, either call earlier in the day or call in the mornings, or so that you know, uh, your bedtime, your mind doesn't sort of go in an overdrive. Uh, some people find that it's helpful for them to use a weighted blanket. A blanket, these are new things that are on the market, so to speak. Not so new, but relatively. It might be a blanket that has about 10 to 15 pound of weight distributed in it. And it's not going to be a game changer, but if you have restless legs, uh, it can help. And if a person is experiencing anxiety, well, it can help as well. Right? And of course, kind of making sure that your nightwear is comfortable. Cotton nightwear would be best, so that it's not you know, um, sticking to you or uncomfortable. All right. Now, let's look now at what, I've been saying that, you need to start calming down in the evenings and have your atmosphere sort of calm down as well. And you might wonder what that might look like. So, typically I would suggest that about 2 hours before bedtime, you reduce the lights in and around the house, and maybe not watch those very, very exciting news or even movies. I personally don't like to watch a very involved film late at night. Uh, Other people in my household differ with that. But I know if I'm going to watch a movie, I'm going to be thinking about it and dreaming about it all night. So, being protective of your sleep, keeping that in mind. Much easier, much better to read a dull book. I mean, a book that's not a murder mystery, right? And there's something about reading those black letters uh, on a yellowish page of a book, of an old book, that really helps you fall asleep. You can, of course, have some soft music playing. You can take a warm bath, as I mentioned. You can, in your room, if you like, you can infuse some, lavender oil. Just have that in diffuser and use that. Another thing that's very helpful is, and this I picked up from Chinese medicine, but it's also reiterated in our Ayurvedic system, and that is to massage the bottom of your feet, the palms of your feet. You can use any oil, mustard oil, or any other oil, and just rub it vigorously on the palm of your feet. The kidney meridian is at the palm of the feet, and the kidney meridian, when it's activated and it's massaged, it helps you fall asleep. So it helps with the quality of sleep. And of course, if you massage the rest of your feet as well, then that might help with the circulation, warm up your feet before sleeping, and also reduce the restlessness, people who experience restless leg syndrome to some degree. So, as I said, none of these things is a game changer, but when you do several of these together, then they start helping. Then, of course, doing something to um, bring down, calm your body, calm your sympathetic nervous system. Ideally, bringing down your heart rate to closer to 60. Um, that is what is needed. And generally, doing some deep breathing, alom vilom, or meditation is super helpful in bringing down your breathing rate and allow you to sleep. In fact, I didn't come to know for the longest time as to why I was staying up at night, because I would have these sugary desserts, couple of them, and be up and not realize that those sugary desserts were causing my heart to beat faster, and that was interfering with my sleep. I thought something was wrong or I was anxious, but it really was the heart beating faster because of all the sugar I had consumed after a party. So keeping that in mind as well. So, with children, we do kind of do that. We start, giving them a warm bath and massaging them, little babies, and then singing a lullaby and putting them to bed, and having a quiet environment so that they can sleep. But with ourselves, our expectations are that we should just, drop on the bed and be asleep. And sometimes as we realize that we have to change that now, as they say that as we get older, we have to nurture ourselves quite the same way as babies. So nothing wrong with that, right? A little bit of TLC. In addition to sleep hygiene and managing the circadian rhythm, um, another important strategy for managing insomnia is what is called cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. So, this essentially is managing your thoughts, that are connected to sleep. Because one of the worst, rather the biggest contributor to poor sleep is the thoughts that we have about our poor sleep. For instance, you're trying to fall asleep and say, oh, gosh, my gosh, it's 11. I haven't fallen asleep yet. Or, oh my gosh, it's 2 p.m. Why am I up at this time? I need to be sleeping. How am I going to manage? I've got so much going on next day. I have people coming, I have to cook, I have to do this. Or, uh, we have to go somewhere. How will I function? Will this happen? Will that happen? Will I be able to go through my whole day if I get up at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. rather, or if I am not asleep till 11, 12, or 1? So these thoughts actually keep us up. And then we keep checking the clock, oh my gosh, 2 baj gaye, oh my God, 3 baje, oh, I'm up at 3 a.m. What am I going to do? So those thoughts of ours are actually not helping us at all, watching the clock and thinking that we cannot function the next day. So it's kind of helpful to see what those thoughts might be and write them down. Are they worrying thoughts? Are they thoughts about some stress in your life? Or are they thoughts about your inability to cope the next day? Kind of just noticing what they are, maybe writing them down during the day, okay, what was the thought that kept me up? And see what you can do to replace them. I mean, replace them with different thoughts that might be a little less, um, you know, worrisome or a little more helpful in inducing better sleep quality. It might be, you might say to yourself, okay, I understand that, I haven't had much sleep or I'm getting up at a late, night in the middle of the night. But there have been times when I've done just okay and managed fine despite the fact that I haven't gotten sleep. And maybe I didn't feel my best, but I managed. Or it could be that, you say to yourself that, okay, it's going to be one of those nights when I might not sleep much, and so be it. I'll work with it. All right. So fear of not sleeping, working with that, and and kind of giving yourself permission, not checking the clock all the time, not making lists at night, right? So these are some of the strategies to use. And then the other one, of course, is to manage the awakenings. Here, there are two thoughts. For a lot of time, as I've worked with, I was working as a psychologist and with Kaiser, and pretty much most, if not all, the persons that I saw had sleep issues because depressed people, anxious people, people with other kind of difficulty, mood disorder, PTSD, sleep does get affected. It's one of the first things that gets affected, in fact. So it's important to keep in mind that uh, that even if you don't sleep at night, you can still get some rest. So as I was saying, that it, for the longest time there was this belief, and it's still said. I mean, this is what you'll find all over the web as well when you research, that if you can't fall asleep, get up and do something. And maybe for some people, it works that way, that, they get up and do something, and they say, don't do anything in bed, use the bed for sleeping only. However, somehow that never worked for me, and it didn't work for some others as well. And it did work for some others. So you have to see which of these is going to be okay for you, right? So if you feel that you want to get up and walk, read, and then go back to bed, by all means do that. However, another option could be that you stay in bed and try to do some deep breathing or meditation or some kind of a jap, because there is this other idea these days of what they call non-sleep deep rest, that even if you're not sleeping, but if you are, doing some deep breathing or meditating or jap, that you're still in a restful state, and that is also restorative and helpful. In fact, a family member of mine, she used to always complain about poor sleep at night. When I was visiting, and for a period of a month, would hear her complain. And then, I mentioned to her about this non-sleep deep rest, and I also mentioned that, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar said that if you meditate for 20 minutes, it's like sleeping for an hour or two, right? So it's as if she, I gave her the permission to sort of be okay with not being fast asleep while she was resting. And ever since then, it's been a game changer. I have not heard her complain about poor sleep, because she says, I get up at 3 or 4 and then I do my job, and sometimes I fall asleep and sometimes I don't, and that's okay. So, keeping that in mind, however, if you're one of those people who needs to get up, go to another room and do some work or read a book, that's fine too, right? And then I think I mentioned this about keeping water and using elaichi, etc., already to manage your awakening. So let's go down further. Now, so we've talked about sleep hygiene, we've talked about circadian rhythms, we've talked about CBT, we've talked about how you can manage those awakenings a little bit. Now let's talk about something that you all want to know, and that is, well, what can you take? Because everyone prefers to take something, it's much quicker, right? As opposed to doing things that take about an hour. Just taking a supplement is more helpful. Now, let's start off with the most commonly used supplement, melatonin. Now, melatonin is good because as we are getting on in age, our body produces it less. So that's a possibility. However, our body does produce it on its own when we have exposure to sunshine in the morning. So that is a better way of producing it rather than taking a supplement, because it is a hormone and it can be disruptive. Dr. Huberman, who's got this research podcast, and he's a professor out of Stanford, and he said that it does disrupt the rest of our hormone system. So be mindful of that. And, occasionally it's okay, especially when you're traveling or something is happening that shifts your sleep wakefulness cycle. It's okay to take melatonin. It's going to reset your circadian rhythm. Especially during jet lag, it's helpful, but perhaps not on a daily basis. Supplements, calcium, zinc, D3, B6, these are helpful. Vitamin D3 is really important in order to get a good night's rest. So it's calcium. Magnesium, some people find that magnesium is very helpful. In fact, an over-the-counter supplement called Calm has a lot of magnesium, so some people swear by that as well. There is theanine, which is a substance generally found in green tea. They've extracted it. It's a calming substance without the caffeine, so that can be helpful. GABA, once again, this is generally prescribed by a doctor, and there are a couple other supplements which you can discuss with your physician, which have been mentioned by Dr. Huberman in his research podcast, glycine and inositol, which can be helpful as well. Now, let's look at some of the natural remedies that I've come across, of course, we've talked about warm milk. Sometimes as we grew up, we were kind of told to take warm milk at nighttime. Some people still find it helpful. Some people like to put haldi in it. And in some states, I think Gujarat and Maharashtra, they talk about putting a little bit of nutmeg in the warm milk. And that is supposed to be quite sedating. In fact, they say don't put too much because it'll, make you a bit too sedated. So keeping that in mind, putting a pinch of nutmeg in warm milk at night. Then, they say tart cherry juice. Some people believe that tart cherry juice is helpful as well. Then we have some teas, yogi makes some good teas, bedtime teas that usually contain passion flower or chamomile. There is valerian root, which is actually quite potent as a sleep-inducing agent. It smells horrible, but if that's something to keep in mind. Also, it can keep you sedated longer in the morning. So that's another thing. So just watch out for these supplements, and especially if you're already taking something that makes you sleepy, don't add on too much because extra sedation, especially sedation that lasts during the day, increases fall risk. And as you know, falls are absolutely something to be avoided as we get on in age. There is a lemon balm that's soothing as well. And so some things that you can try. And it's a trial and error when it comes to these. And I can say that you should consult your physician because some of them may interact with other medications. If you have a medication that's already causing sedation and you add these, or if there is some other reason why they're contraindicated. The problem is that in medical school, these natural herbs are not talked about as much, so they may not know too much about them. So, though I say consult a physician, you may not find that consultation very helpful. But you can ask them to check their formulary and the the database, and you can do the same as well online to see whether the medications that you are taking, whether any of these supplements have any contraindications or any reasons why you shouldn't take them alongside your regular medication. The in Ayurveda and yoga also help. Of course, regular use of yoga can really, really help you with sleep. And you may have heard lately with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking about how he only sleeps 4.5 hours. But he's a yogi, so people who do regular yoga do indeed need less sleep, and that sleep of theirs is very restorative and deep, as he says, as Mr. Modi says, his is. So, of course, if you are fortunate enough to be in a habit of doing yoga on a daily basis, kudos to you, absolutely. Then we Abhyanga in Ayurveda, which is applying oil to your head and your feet. And I already talked about the feet. So, kind of doing that. Nutmeg or haldi in milk is also an Ayurvedic prescription for sleep. Then, certain herbs such as Brahmi, Ashwagandha, certain pranayam like Alom Vilom, those are very helpful. Yoga Nidra, which you can practice, that's helpful. And meditation or japa of some kind is helpful as well. Now, homeopathy, I want to mention a couple of things here. You will find most persons, especially physicians, if you consult with them, this will not sit well with them because it's generally considered hocus pocus. But I know that most of you are from India and you may have heard of homeopathy or you may have used it at some point. So there are a couple of things that are generally harmless. One of them is Califos and one of them is Magfos. Now, Califos in a 6x, it's a calming. I don't even want to call it medicine or even remedy, because what it is a biochemic supplement, biochemic salt. It's something that our body already has, and it's soothing in times of stress. It calms our mind. It also calms our body and allows us to rest. So, taking that, which you can get from Sprouts or from Amazon. The other one is MagFos. This is also very relaxing. It allows the body to, kind of manage the magnesium in the body well. So it's relaxing on that account. Also, it relaxes the muscles, and especially people who are prone to getting cramps at night or who have restless leg syndrome. It can be helpful for that. Some family members and friends have talked about using this combination called the Requeg combination R14 that they have said that they have found very helpful in sleeping. It's something you take for a few days in a row for it to actually be effective. Um, this is something that you may want to double check on the web or talk to a physician and ask them to check before you take, because while Califos and Macfos don't really contain anything that, to the best of my knowledge, has any drug interaction, a Requig combination has a few other things, so just check that out. And of course, sometimes people take Unisom or Tylenol PM or Amazon Sleep Aid. Most of these are actually antihistamines, and sedation is a side effect of these antihistamines. So they're used as sleep medications. They can cause dry mouth. It's fine to use occasionally, probably not a good idea to use them on a daily basis. Then over the counter, you can get some substance called Calm, which has a lot of magnesium in it, which can help with sleep. There's another combination available over the counter called Tranquil. Once again, check with your physician, but some people I know have used and found it helpful. Some people say that they find just a few drops of, CBD. They've been using that lately. My sense with that is that it's okay for an occasional, but on a daily basis, you sort of build tolerance, and on a daily basis, it's not as helpful. And of course, you may have your own biases regarding this as well. So, with regards to medications, there are two categories. There is benzodiazepines, which can be habit forming, and there are some others which are not as habit forming. So, benzodiazepines are, the different medications which are similar to Valium, like Ativan, Klonopin, and habit forming, still prescribed for occasional use. And check with your physicians. Just because just because they're a habit forming doesn't mean you should never use them. It'll be, of course, only under strict prescription and consultation. Likewise, some other medications which are not as habit forming as benzodiazepines, though sometimes tolerance can build up. Ambien, Lunesta, Sonata. Once again, be mindful, be careful, try other things, sleep hygiene, and other things we discussed first. Um, there are some antidepressants like Remeron and Trazodone, which are not habit forming, but can be helpful, can cause sedation, and or you may find that it suits you or not suits you. They are prescription only. But if you haven't slept for a few days, 3 days in a row, it's better to take something. Still, then it's better to take Tylenol PM or something to help you sleep rather than go without sleep, because the consequences of that are worse than taking a sleep medication, right? Another thing I want to mention is that sometimes, and I think I alluded to that briefly, is that uh, anxiety and depression can be sort of suppressed and you may not be aware of having them, or you, even if you are aware, you may not think of treating them. You're worried about sleep, but you don't want to necessarily address anxiety or depression, either because there is stigma attached to it, or because you feel that there is a rightful reason in your life to be anxious or depressed, and therefore uh, there's nothing you can do about it. But in reality, if you don't treat anxiety and depression, it's going to be hard for you to manage not just your sleep, but various other illnesses as well, such as diabetes and hypertension and other heart issues. So, anxiety and depression, especially depression, really important to treat it in order to manage other physical health. Your physiological health is related to treating it. And then I think this might very well be my last slide, as Indians, and you're all here. I think you have children here who are adults. You probably have grandchildren too. And you care about them, and you're constantly thinking about their lives, what's happening right in their lives and what's not happening right in their life. And sometimes you may think that they're not doing the things that you feel are right for them. So they should do this, they should not do that. There's this constant thinking about it as if your life depends on it. And unfortunately, you're not able to do anything about it because it's not in your hands, not in your control. They're going to do what they're going to do, they're going to lead the life that they're going to lead. And it's a solo journey, and you cannot really hold their hands forever. So have some compassion for yourself, try and detach and let go, and be grateful for the blessings. So letting go, detaching a little, and exercising gratitude goes a long way in a good night's rest. All right, thank you. And I'll be open to questions in person. Take care. Bye.